Hi, Peter King with the MMQB here, and this is a little bit of a pre-combine roundup that we're going to tell you everything you need to know about the NFL Scouting Combine starting later this week in Indianapolis. I'm with two of my peers at the MMQB, Vrentas, Tim Rohan. So guys, let's just start off by saying that, to me, I think one of the most interesting things about the Combine this year is that you've got so many teams looking for quarterbacks, and yet there's no sure thing. I mean, when you look at a guy like Mitch Trubisky, I think probably the number one guy in the minds of a lot of people in the NFL from North Carolina, he's got 13 starts. So you're an NFL team, you're Cleveland, you're San Francisco, you're Chicago right at the top of the draft. What do you do, Jenny Vrentas?
If I'm one of those teams, especially if you're Cleveland and you have so much draft capital, I would draft a quarterback high and I would go for Jimmy Garoppolo. That way you hedge your bets. If you draft one of these top guys that needs development, maybe he becomes trade bait later if Garoppolo works out. If not, you have a contingency plan. I would double down. You're the
GM, Tim Rohan. What do you do with your Cleveland Browns?
I think you had it right in the column today, in your Monday morning quarterback column. You go get Jimmy Garoppolo. He looks like a polished guy, and you have so many picks to play with. Obviously, if you're the Browns, you have to do your homework on all these quarterbacks in the draft, and you have to pick someone, right? Like you have to have someone that you can go to your fan base and go to your fans and say, this is our guy going forward. And I don't know if that's Mitch Trubisky. I don't know if that's Deshaun Watson. I don't know if that guy is in this draft. And if you pick one of those guys, you're going to have to wait a while. And I don't know how much longer the Browns can wait. As you wrote today, they have a lot of ammunition. They can go, put together a deal that will be attractive for the Patriots to go get Garoppolo.
I think one of the problems right now, if you're the Cleveland Browns, and this is why I really feel for Hugh Jackson, Sashi Brown, the general manager, the entire front office, I really feel for him because they have all of these picks. They have 8 picks in the top 150, including the first pick overall. They have all these picks, and yet there's no lock guy. There's no Andrew Luck. There's not even a Marcus Mariota. Everybody has a big question mark. And, the other thing is, let's say they wanted to go get a guy who's going to be a restricted free agent at best, and that's Kirk Cousins, because I think Washington's going to put the franchise tag on him. So then you got to pay a guy $24 million a year and 2 ones. So it's really a difficult thing that they have. Jenny, I know that you know Hugh Jackson very well, the coach of the Browns. What do you think's going through his head right now as he's trying to figure out what do we do at quarterback?
Yeah, because I think year one, right, they accumulated all these picks. They were trying to put the process in motion. But the main thing that was clear that first year was they just didn't have enough talent on the roster. It was largely, rookies, first-year players. They didn't have enough talent at a lot of positions, and especially quarterback. So now they have to figure out some kind of answer moving forward. I mean, that's why I think, they've got to go in and Garoppolo. But if you like a quarterback and you want to get to this offseason, I don't think that's a bad situation either. I think Hugh Jackson is an excellent coach, but you have to have talent on the roster to win with. So he's got to do everything he can to get talent at the most important position.
It's funny, and this is one of the reasons I feel sad for Hugh Jackson. There's another veteran that he likes a lot, A.J. McCarron of the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals, Hugh Jackson was the offensive coordinator. He was A.J. McCarron's first coach in the NFL. Do you think Mike Brown is going to trade a good backup quarterback within the division? I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. You make him a great offer, who knows? But that's another difficult thing that the Browns have to deal with. But anyway, we've done enough on Cleveland. Tim, let's turn to San Francisco. You're Kyle Shanahan right now, new general manager John Lynch. It strikes me that they might be the first team to take a quarterback in this draft. Do you think right now that, Deshaun Kaiser, kind of an inconsistent guy at Notre Dame, has he shown enough for either him or Trubisky to be the second pick in this draft?
I don't know. And I think that's what Shanahan's going to have to do this week at the Combine, right? He's going to have to do his homework on all these guys, right? Find out as much as he can about Deshaun Watson, about Deshaun Kaiser, about Trubisky, about Mahomes, Texas Tech. Do your homework and figure out which of these guys you want to go with. I just think it's so risky if you're taking a guy in the top 5, right, and you're not completely sure that he's your guy, because then Shanahan's married to that guy for the next couple of years. You can't just give up on him after 1 year or a year and a half. You have to give him 2 years. I mean, you see it nowadays, guys aren't getting that long. But if you take him that high, you're really married to him. So Mayhawk said that, there's not a guy that you'd take in the top 10 in this draft just because that designation of being a top 10 pick.
And the other problem with the quarterback position in this draft is that if you wait, by the time you pick again, they're all going to be gone. I mean, there's a good chance that if you like 2 or 3 of them, they're going to be gone by the time you pick in the second round. So that's a problem. But I'd also make this point just about the combine in general, but particularly as it relates to the quarterback position. There aren't going to be a lot of answers this week. Jenny, you've been to, however many combines, 6 or 8 combines. To me, one of the most difficult things is when you go to the scouting combine, everybody expects when you walk out of there, oh, well, now you got all the answers at quarterback or receiver, at running back. And you don't really. I think one of the things you were able to do last year at the combine is you were able to sit with the Miami Dolphins and their brain trust when they did one of their interviews with a quarterback last year. So that strikes me as a really valuable piece of the puzzle this week at the scouting combine. What are those interviews like?
Yeah, I think what those interviews can do sometimes is rule a guy out for you. But I don't think you'll necessarily walk out of your interview and say, I'm sure about this guy, except
because they're only 15 minutes long.
They're only 15 minutes. It's rapid fire. So the one that I saw, the first 7 or 8 minutes were about the player's background, and then they delved into film study. And I don't know, they got through a handful of his college plays, asking him questions like, how much help were you getting from the sidelines? What was your freedom at the line of scrimmage? Just to get a sense of, is this a college quarterback that could transition into the NFL? But yeah, it's 15 minutes. They bring these guys in for a top 30 visit. That's when they get to know them better. They spend a much longer time with them, and they can work them out. They can get them in the classroom for longer. But I think you can rule a guy out. I mean, a lot of these teams will send this, if it's a top quarterback they're looking at maybe in the first round, they might send him a sample playbook and then test him on how well he recalls that at the combine. And if, for instance, someone doesn't do very well on that test, he could, a lot of teams could sour on him. So I think that's something that you might see happening this week. But other than that, it's such a brief time that it's hard to get an impression that would really influence heavily, I think.
Tim, one of the things about this particular combine is that the NFL has basically denied entry to 3 players, including one of the top running backs in this draft. They've denied entry because of off-field problems that all 3 guys have had. So I'm wondering, I expressed an opinion in my column that basically said, the scouting combine is for fact-finding and information gathering. And if you're not going to allow your teams to gather information on controversial guys, I mean, is that the smartest thing? But what's your take on the NFL saying that Kelly and Mixon particularly, who would be really high picks, that they're not allowed to go to the combine?
Well, I think the combine has become an event, right? It's become a spectacle. It's become a made-for-TV, 7-day or however many days it is, just for fans to sit at home and watch these guys run the 40 and all these things. The press conference the last couple of years, you watch Manti Te'o, Johnny Manziel, these guys, it's just a swarm. It becomes completely a distraction for the league, a distraction for, and it's not very productive either, right? I mean, you guys have been in those scrums. So I think, obviously the NFL is just trying to avoid that kind of, bad PR hit it could take. But like you said, I think, I wrote about this a little bit last week. What is the NFL doing to kind of help transition these guys, right? Like, here are these guys who have these off-field concerns. Mixon, punched a woman, had to sit out a year at Oklahoma. And now, it's up to the NFL team to decide whether or not, how much he should be, judged or affected by that. Tyreek Hill goes in the 5th round, right? What's the chart? There's no, the NFL, I think, needs to have a better system in place for transitioning these guys, who have character concerns that are coming from college into the NFL. They took a big step, revamping their investigative process with dealing with these issues when they happen in the league. There needs to be something in place to evaluate these guys, to kind of give teams information about what happened, what occurred, and I think that's a big gap right now.
All right, so we're going to wrap up, and I'm going to ask both of you about your biggest storyline this week at the Scouting Combine. What are you expecting to see, and what will be the biggest headline coming out of this Scouting Combine? Tim, I'm going to start with you.
The quarterbacks. I think there's a lot, as you said, there might not be a clear-cut answer, but, the media, there's going to be an answer. Someone's going to have won the Combine, right? Whether it's Deshaun Watson or Trubisky or any one of those 4 top guys. Someone's going to come out of the Combine having, made all the throws, said all the right things. I don't know. I think, see who in the quarterback class can maybe nudge themselves here or there and maybe gain some momentum going into, the rest of the draft season. So how the quarterback class kind of shakes out, I think that's the headline.
Jenny.
I mean, I think the players that are omitted this year is a headline because, they put this policy in place last year, but it wasn't as under the microscope as it is this year, I think, in large part because of guys like Joe Mixon. So are, general managers at their press conference availability going to speak out against this rule saying, hey, we would have really liked to have these guys here to sit them down in the interviews? I think it could be they didn't want to invite these guys, right? Because it does become then that becomes like the show of the day. But if a lot of teams are talking about it, head coaches and general managers, it's going to still be a huge talking point.
There's no question that that's a talking point, and also the quarterbacks. And you're right, because they're quarterbacks, there are going to be massive discussions about them. I think what is going to be very interesting at this Combine is the depth of defense. I mean, Mike Mayock said, it's been at least 10 years since he has seen a defensive draft that's going to be as good as this one. And what's so interesting is that the way the game is changing now. I mean, what I find interesting about the sport of football right now is that on first down, the game has changed so drastically from, say, even 15 years ago. 15 years ago, you would always have, 7 men up front, and you'd have 1 or 2 that would be big guys, run stuffers. Well, now, Tim, you're in the process right now doing a story on Deion Jones of the Atlanta Falcons. A lightweight kind of guy, but a really impact player, and he's going to be on the field at all times. And talking to Mayock and listening to what people around the NFL are saying, this fascinates me. Because safeties who can run right now, safeties who can run and cover, are becoming almost as valuable as the proverbial shutdown corner, because they're becoming 3-down players. They're not just like dime guys anymore, because you need to have those guys up against the run, and they also need to be able to cover. And I think in this draft, Jabril Peppers is one of them. There are guys, 3 or 4 guys that the NFL loves who could run in the 4.4 range, real cornerback speed, but who weigh 215, 220 pounds. So they're going to convince teams, hey, listen, let's play a little bit differently than we normally do. Let's get big guys in the secondary, and instead of them being just dime guys, they're going to be 3-down guys. That, to me, is going to be a headline. And hey, that's not the sexiest headline in the world, but I think that is really going to bear watching. UConn's got a guy going to the Combine whose name I cannot pronounce, and Jabril Peppers, but there are a bunch of guys like that. I think the defensive part of this draft is really going to be fascinating. We're going to leave it right there, guys. Thank you. Jenny Vrentas, Tim Rohan for the MMQB. I'm Peter King, and that is your Scouting Combine preview.